The bus arrived again and again full of passengers. A woman with crutches and a bag tried to enter, but once again, she realized the futility of her next attempt. The next bus arrived, but then 4 young guys ran up to the bus with the intention of being the first to take their seats. The bus stopped. A tall man with a bag over his shoulders came up to them, pushed these guys away with a strong hand, and nodded to the woman. "Girl, come in." She looked at him in surprise and began to clumsily climb. Strong hands fell on her waist, and she found herself in the passenger compartment of the bus. The man ordered the boy sitting in the front seat, "Get up." He hurriedly got up, seeing a woman with crutches. The woman nodded to the man. "Thank you." The woman asked the driver, "Please stop at the next stop." She got up, paid, and began to leave, but a little earlier the same man did it. He got out and helped her out. The woman smiled. "Thank you. Do you live nearby?" "No, I spent 10 years in prison from where I was released. My friend should live in the city, but he disappeared somewhere. So what now?" "I will accompany you and I will decide what to do next." He held out his hand. "Give me your bag. Don't be afraid of me." She let go of the handle of her bag. "Thank you." "What is your name?" "Nancy." "And my name is Larry." "Larry, why were you in prison?" He smiled sadly. "If 10 years, then for something serious." "Where are you going now?" "I will sleep somewhere, and tomorrow I will decide what to do next." The girl nodded her head. "Larry, this is my house. 4th entrance. Would you like to be escorted to your apartment?" "No, I live on the ground floor." "Okay, Nancy, goodbye." He handed her the bag, turned and walked away. She called out to him, "Larry." He stopped. "What, Nancy?" "Stay with me. Where are you going now?" He approached her, looking at her with sad eyes, and said, "Aren't you afraid of me? I've been in prison for 10 years. "Why should I be afraid? Let's go too." They entered the apartments. The apartment is 1 bedroom and clean. The landlady nodded at the room. "Come in. Now I'm going to cook something for dinner." Then she went to the kitchen. The guests followed her. "Let me help you. We can talk." They began to drink tea while the soup was boiling, and they talked. "Nancy, what's wrong with your legs?" "I've had such legs since childhood. I grew up in an orphanage. I was examined by different doctors when I was little, but something..." She sighed heavily. "Then no one needed me, and even more so now." Clear. I constantly look about this on the internet. They write that my legs can be healed, but even an online consultation is expensive there, and my pension is only enough for the bare necessities. She sighed heavily again. "I'm used to my situation. I'm 27 years old. I'm already 42 years old." The woman smiled. 42 is the dawn for you." Then she got up and walked over to the stove to continue cooking. And Larry noticed that the crutches stood aside, and a wooden plank about 10 centimeters thick lay under her leg, which was shorter. In addition, both legs were twisted. A terrible thought flashed through his head. How could he get used to this? After dinner, they had a question. Where will the guests sleep? Nancy never had such a question. She never had guests. Sometimes a neighbor came to her for tea, but the man has not yet slept with her. "Nancy, don't worry. I'll sleep on the floor because I'm already used to it." Nancy couldn't calm down. "I'm sorry, I invited you, but you have nowhere to lie down." Larry spread out a blanket and pillow in the kitchen and went to bed. He thought that he would spend only one night there, and tomorrow he would again go looking for his friend, who had their common money left and on whom his future life depended. He hadn't slept well the last 3 nights, so he fell asleep instantly. Nancy couldn't sleep for a long time that night. After all, today she met an extraordinary man. People are often indifferent to the grief of others, and that never happened to her. She thought to herself, how extraordinary to have such a man pay attention to you. At the bus stop, I had no idea that this could happen to me. Then he walked me home. We cooked together. What a happiness. But for some, it's commonplace. She lay for a long time, remembering every moment spent with him. And suddenly, she thought of what had frightened her at first. She really liked this man. She has already resigned herself to the fact that she will live alone all her life, that she will never have a husband and even a friend. She began to drive away these thoughts from herself. No, this will never happen. He saw my ugly legs. No man can overcome disgust. And I'm a woman. I really want at least a small piece of happiness. Nancy fell asleep only in the morning, and she dreamed that she was lying on the green grass and looking at the dark sky, through which the pictures of her life were floating. Suddenly, the sky became clear and she saw herself walking on her feet towards Larry. She woke up from the sound of the door being closed. Tears welled up in her eyes. He's gone, and he didn't even say goodbye. What was I hoping for? He didn't promise to return. This will never happen. No man will ever tell me, I love you. I will never have a child. She cried until she fell asleep. She seems to have resigned herself to the inevitable. The creak of the door being opened not only woke her up, but also made her rise sharply. She fumbled for her crutches and stood up without taking her eyes off the room door. His voice rang out. It's me. I went grocery shopping. The woman's heart was beating wildly. He entered the room with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Nancy, this is for you. The crutches fell out of her hand and the ceiling flashed before her eyes. Strong hands didn't let her fall. Nancy, what's wrong with you? She opened her eyes. His frightened face was in front of her. She said in confusion, I don't know. She sat down, not taking her frightened eyes off of his face, and suddenly she hugged him by the neck, not controlling her actions, and said through tears, Don't leave me. He smiled. I won't leave if you don't kick me out. I won't kick you out. Let's go get some coffee. Half an hour later, they were sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee and cake. Nancy listened to their plans for the future, not taking her happy eyes off his face. I need to go to the police today and get registered. I have money. We were transferred money to a card for work in prison, and for 10 years I accumulated a decent amount. I'll try to get a job right away. He shared his plans with her for a long time, and she didn't really understand what he was talking about. But his last phrase brought the woman back to reality. You must find out everything about your illness. Find out where it's treated and how much it costs. She lowered her head sadly. Larry, we won't have enough money for the treatment. He stood up. We will try to find money. Okay, I'll go to the police to register. He saw that the woman was sitting with her head down, went up to her, hugged her and said, Nancy, stop being sad. I don't have anyone in the world either. He leaned over and whispered in her ear, Except you. Larry returned in the afternoon. Nancy managed to cook dinner and sit at the computer. Larry immediately began to tell. They told me that I have to come to the police 3 times a month. They also advised me to get a job. What were you doing? Did you find out anything about your legs? She lowered her head. I have to go to a consultation in another city. I think it's all useless. The prices are huge. Nancy, don't worry. We will decide. During the day, they managed to look for a job for Larry on the internet and go shopping. Either they were tired of loneliness or fate decided so, but they were more and more drawn to each other. 3 days later, they went to another city for a consultation at the best clinic. Of course, the consultation was paid. After being examined by specialists, the head doctor of the clinic received them in his office. I'll immediately say that your case is complicated. Treatment will take place in 3 stages. That is, you will be in the clinic for half a year and at home for a year. Then you will have rehabilitation. In a couple of years, you will be a healthy woman. And the doctor smiled at Nancy. The head doctor waited until the woman got rid of her rainbow dreams and continued. Each stage of treatment, together with surgeries and maintenance at the clinic, plus rehabilitation, will cost you $100,000. The doctor turned to the man. Do you agree? Larry confidently nodded his head. Yes. They left the clinic and got into a called taxi. In the taxi, both were occupied with their own thoughts. Of course, their thoughts were different, but about one thing. But if God caused them to meet, then He will help them. Nancy felt Larry start suddenly. Larry, what's the matter with you? But he was looking out the window of the taxi at the man who got out of the luxury car, who, with a masterful step, went into the office. It was his friend, that friend. He put his arm around his girlfriend and held her close. Nancy, everything will be fine. The next day, Larry again went to the city. This time he went alone. He went to the same building where he saw his friend, but that car was not on the parking lot. He sat down on a bench and waited. He waited for at least an hour. Finally, a car appeared, from which the man he was looking for got out. He ordered something to his driver and went to the office. "Steve!" He turned and looked closer. "Larry, is that you?" "As you can see, it's me." They hugged, forgetting everything that happened 10 years ago. His friend was not to blame for what happened to Larry then. Steve put a hand on his shoulder and said, "Okay, let's go." They entered a restroom. They entered a room. Steve took out a bottle of cognac and glasses. "Let's drink to the meeting." They ate chocolate, and Larry got straight to the point. "Steve, I need the money." "Larry, let me decide everything, because it will be more correct. Do you agree?" "Okay, I agree. I will put $1 million in a bank account in your name at 2% per annum. After all, we had about $1 million 10 years ago. 2% is $20,000 a year. You will not withdraw this million yet. This will be enough for you and future children." Steve filled the glass, nodded his head, and continued. "That's not all. You will move from this city, and you will come to work with me as Deputy Chief of Security. Maybe sooner I'll retire my Chief of Security. You will also get a good salary every month. Steve, I'm under administrative supervision." His friend smiled. "Now we'll figure it out." He took out his phone, dialed a number, and turned on the speakerphone. "Hi, Mr. Emerson." "Hi, Steve." "I have a problem. My friend lives in another city and he is under administrative supervision, and he needs to move to my city for permanent residence." "What's your friend's name?" "Larry Michaels." "Now I'll call, and he will be removed from supervision." He put the phone down on the table. "Larry, your supervision issue is resolved. Now, do you agree?" "I agree, but..." His friend laughed again. "Oh, yes." Then he went to the safe, took out 4 packs of banknotes and placed them in front of Larry. Steve asked again, "Do you agree now?" "Of course I agree. You also decided everything for the two of us 10 years ago." Larry returned home to Nancy only in the evening. He hugged her. "A new life begins for us. We're going to the clinic tomorrow." "And money?" He took out and placed in front of the woman packs of banknotes. "Oh my God, I've never seen so much money. Where did you get them?" "I met my friend. He gave them to me. Now he is a successful businessman. He offered me a good job in his company. I will visit you every day at the clinic." "Thank you, Larry." "Nancy, why are you crying?" "Larry, I cry with happiness. Why are you doing all this for me?" "I love you. I want you to be my wife." She looked at him with wide eyes for a minute. Nancy wept with happiness, buried in his shoulder, but continued. "I agree, but let's wait until I can walk without crutches. I want you to have a healthy bride." It's been 2 years. Long separations were replaced by months when they were together. Larry bought a huge apartment. 6 months ago, Nancy was discharged from the clinic. She walked out of there without crutches. A month later, Larry and Nancy became husband and wife. Today, she was waiting for him from work, as always. Her husband was the head of security at a large firm run by their friend Steve. Her husband was often late at work. She was used to it, but today she wanted him to come home as soon as possible. After all, she has such amazing news, and so he went home. She immediately threw herself on his neck. "Larry, we will have a baby!"